morning, or afternoon or evening, whenever you're watching this. Hey, I just saw something cool. Revelation chapter 2, verse 7. This is Jesus speaking to John, who is writing down the book of Revelation. And these words are in red in my Bible. This is exactly what Jesus said to him. And I'm going to pluck out verse 7. So the background is Jesus is giving instructions to John to write a letter to each of 7 churches. And in the first he writes to Ephesus. And in the last verse of his message to Ephesus, he says, "To him who overcomes, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God." Where have we heard of a tree of life before? Other end of the Bible. In Genesis, when God made the Garden of Eden, there was a tree of life. And Adam and Eve, incidentally, were not told they couldn't eat of that tree. They were told they weren't to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Apparently, they didn't eat of the tree of life because God says at the end of Genesis 3, after Adam and Eve disobeyed him, therefore the Lord God sent him out of the Garden of Eden to cultivate the ground from which he was taken. So he drove the man out, and at the east of the Garden of Eden he stationed the cherubim and the flaming sword, which turned every direction to guard the way to the tree of life. Should have started in 22. Verse 22 says, "Then the Lord God said, Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil, and now he might stretch out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him out from the garden." So I learned from Pastor Chris Hodges at Church of the Highlands this comparison of the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. In our humanity, we are prone to go toward the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If I know more, I will do better. If I follow the rules, if I learn all the rules and follow them, I'm going to be fine. I'll make it to heaven. As long as I know what's right, I'll do it. But the teaching of the book of Genesis is that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil brings death. And I'm summarizing things I've learned from Pastor Chris. So, Church of the Highlands, go see what's available in sermons, look for message on the trees to get more depth. But I just want to summarize it because I love that it was at the beginning of the Bible, and then here it is at the end in Revelation. The tree of life still exists in paradise. The tree of life isn't about rules. The tree of life is about loving Jesus. In fact, in the letter to the Ephesians, the thing that Jesus was saying to them was, here's what I see, a lot of stuff you're doing that's good, but here's the problem I have with you. You've left your first love. If Christianity is about rules, about who knows the most, about pushing yourself to do everything right and hating everything wrong, if that's all Christianity is to you, you're barking up the wrong tree, so to speak. That's all tree of knowledge of good and evil stuff. And it's not to say that you aren't to know good and evil. This book, the Bible, talks all about good and evil, tells you how to live a holy life for God. But the key is the tree of life. We don't live the Christian life out of a set of rules. We live it out of love for Jesus Christ. When you live your life out of love for God, you are eating from the tree of life. You are freed. Imagine yourself in a marriage where everything you do for the other person is because you're working hard to do the right thing. This leads to resentment, nitpicking, comparison even. How come I'm doing this for him and he's not doing this for me? And it's the same way in your walk for Christ. Just knowledge, the Bible says in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, it puffs you up. You get arrogant. You think about how you're doing it your way. Or worse, you're doing it the right way and everybody else is doing it the wrong way. But that's not to be our focus. We are to serve Jesus out of love for him, gratitude for his sacrifice on our behalf. If you're serving your spouse out of love, because you want to do for them, because you love them, everything's different. It's not so hard to help boost them when they're down. It's not so hard to, you're not keeping track, I guess is what I want to say, of how many times they've served you versus how many times you've served them. Because it's not about any of that. You love them. You're blessed when they're blessed. And it changes a marriage, and it also changes your walk with Christ. So if you have found yourself leaning toward a specific focus on following the rules, I would challenge you to go to God. Ask him to renew your love for him, to give you a fresh gratitude for the cross of Christ. Spend some time. Go to the book of Psalms and look at how David praises. Spend some time following his example and praising God And it's not just David. There's other people who wrote in the book of Psalms. But focus on what they say. He is my rock. He is my refuge. Start thinking about what he is to you. Ask him to renew your love. The tree of life comes from that love, not from just knowledge. And to him that overcomes, God will grant us to eat of the literal tree of life, which still exists in paradise. And everything comes full circle, because God knows how to tie up all the little pieces. I just think it's so cool.